Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Game of Thrones in Maharashtra has been on for a whole week now. MLAs rushing out of the state, their homes and offices vandalized, and acidic statements and jibes coming in from both sides. The state has seen it all. But today perhaps came the final blow for Uddhav Sena, a supreme setback, if you will. The top court stayed disqualification proceedings under further notice, which means at least until 11th of July when the next hearing happens in the top court. Uddhav Thackeray and his Aghadi partners cannot move to punish the rebels sitting in Guwahati. The Shinde camp gets 14 days to respond to the deputy speaker, which means till 12th of July evening, which is exactly what they had sought from the court. More time is what they wanted and more time is what they've got. The rebels also have put on record that they have support of 39 Sena MLAs, and that proves that the Uddhav Sena and the Aghadi government is in minority. Add to that the notice that has been sent to Deputy Speaker and the state to file an affidavit in the next 5 days and explain themselves. And most importantly, the Supreme Court has put the onus on the state to ensure protection of the rebels and their families. This after repeated instances of violence were reported from the state. Vandalism that the party's chief has failed to condemn. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this order was pronounced after heated arguments in the court that really went on for more than 2 hours. The Shinde camp argued against the disqualification notice, saying Deputy Speaker cannot decide on the disqualification when his own continuance is in doubt because the motion to remove the speaker came in a day before the motion to disqualify the rebels. While Abhishek Manu Singhvi questioned the very reason why this case was being heard in the Supreme Court, but the court didn't really take the bait. Both sides, high-powered legal battery of lawyers, Rajiv Dhawan, Abhishek Manu Singhvi on behalf of the Maharashtra Speaker, as well as the Aghadi government. On the other side, Neeraj Kishan called for Eknath Shinde. Shinde's legal team was ready with precedents and arguments to counter them, but Uddhav Sena is still confident that they can beat a floor test. Low on numbers but high on optics seems to be the strategy for Uddhav Sena. Listen in to Aditya Thackeray when he reiterated his traitor jibe once again to the Shinde camp.
कॉन्फिडेंस जीत की तो पूरी है और प्यार भी पूरा है. जो दगेबाजी करते हैं वो कभी जीतते नहीं है, जो भाग के जाते हैं वो कभी जीतते नहीं है. फ्लोर टेस्ट से मुझे सबसे बड़ी टेस्ट यही है, अगर जो भी बागी है, जो भाग के गए हैं, जो खुद को रिबेलियन कह रहे हैं, रिबेलियन करना होता तो यहाँ हिम्मत से करते, राजीनामा देते, रिजाइन करते और सामने चुनाव के लिए खड़े रहते. मेरी बात पूरी होगी. दूसरी फ्लोर टेस्ट यही होगी कि मेरे सामने बैठे आंखों में आंखें डाल के बोले कि हमने क्या गलत किया.
Now, what gives Aditya Thackeray and the Sena loyalists this confidence that they will win? Because if you look at the numbers, they are only left with 15 or 16 MLAs. The Shinde camp numbers are rising and rising rapidly. 48 MLAs in all, and at least 39 of them are from the Shiv Sena. They can easily topple Uddhav's minority government, especially if they join ranks with the BJP. So that brings me to the legitimate question on the Newshour tonight. Is resignation the only option left for Uddhav Thackeray? That's the question, and that's the debate on the other side.
You're watching the Newshour at 9. Debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
And joining me on the debate tonight is Dr. Anand Ranganathan, author, Ratan Sharda, author, Swapnil Kothari, senior lawyer, Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate, Yogi Gade, leader of the Shiv Sena, Tehseen Poonawala, political analyst. But before I go across to my panel tonight, big breaking news coming in. According to latest information that we are hearing, the BJP is likely to hold a high-level meeting in Delhi tomorrow. In fact, over the next 24 hours, anytime. we are given to understand that Devendra Fadnavis may be heading to Delhi anytime soon to join this meeting and discuss the situation in Maharashtra. All happening at this time. So far, BJP has been watching, waiting in the wings, but now swinging into action, and a high-level meeting being held in the capital sometime tomorrow is what we are being given to understand. Also, the fact that Devendra Fadnavis and top leaders of the core group in BJP core group in Maharashtra, which held a meeting with Devendra Fadnavis earlier this evening, could be headed to New Delhi tomorrow. So the writings on the wall, is there some move which can somehow create a floor test? Is this preparation for that? We'll wait and watch. But big breaking news coming in today, and it sets the tone for which way Maharashtra is going to go over the next 24 to 48 hours. And I want to ask Yogi Gade ji. Yogi Gade ji, it has to be decided on the floor of the house. Kaun si Sena asli Sena hai? Eknath Shinde ji is saying that he has 39 Shiv Sena, True Blue MLAs, and Aditya Thackeray ready for floor test, but keeps repeating, like Uddhav Thackeray ji, that unko वापस बुलाओ, सामने बैठ के आंख में आंख डाल के बोलो. Every time he says that, दो तीन और चले जाते हैं दूसरी तरफ. I want to ask you, many appeals have been made to these rebels to come back. They haven't yet come back. Are you still banking on the numbers to, grow from the level of 15 or 16 that Mr. Uddhav Thackeray has right now?
Navika ji, if you are going to see, after the MLC voting happened, immediately these MLAs were taken, most of them. And if you go to, they are in high security in Govt in Assam. How they can't even get out of the hotel even if they want to. The number one. And as far as you go to say about the floor test, yes, everything will be decided on the floor test, floor of the house when there's a floor test. And you cannot come to conclusions that they have the numbers because they are showing in the video or they are showing that. Once what happens in the assembly is the true result. And going to the point, who is a true Sena, who is not. If you go to see, Eknath Shinde is the leader of the house for the legislative assembly for the party. So therefore, there cannot be a claim that he has a claim over the upper house also, and over there are so many other municipal corporations, Zilla Parishad elections where Shiv Sena has won. So definitely the real Shiv Sena will obviously be with Uddhavji Thackeray Sahib, because the MLAs are a group of a faction only for the legislative assembly. So obviously they cannot claim to be the original face of the entire property in the state of the party in the state or else in the national level.
Property kahan se aa gaya? Ratan Sharda ji, I want to ask you, if 39 MLAs are with Eknath Shinde, and we both were on a show just 5 minutes ago with Deepak Keshakar, who said that there was no zor, no zabardasti, no force, no security, and they were doing what they wanted to do in the hotel that they are in right now. So where is this whole charge continuing to come from? Number one. And number two, there have been reports that Uddhav Thackeray wants to resign, but it is Sharad Pawar who is dissuading him from the resignation right now. So the question is, why is Sharad Pawar dissuading him? Does he have hope for the numbers for Uddhav to increase?
See, Navika, as far as Sharad, and I have told earlier, I will repeat again, he is one of the most manipulative politicians in India. He is the one with just 1/3 of MLAs ever, whenever he has stood right from 78, has been able to control the politics, but his politics doesn't go beyond a few districts of Western Maharashtra. But he can play the games. I think his fear is that if the government goes, what will happen to NCP? Because they have in a driver's seat right now. Secondly, this talk about propriety for people who actually destroyed the alliance on which they won, to talk about samne aake baat kar and all that, bombastic statement. These were people samne aake baat kiya. These people didn't listen to them. The PM was just on Facebook and on the phone. He never met his people. It was NCP which met his MLA, did their work. These people did nothing. So if that is the case, then today they're playing this kind of game. I can't understand the people who say that we will show them ताकत है तो सामने के खड़े हो, रिजाइन करो. तो भैया आपने शिवसेना ने रिजाइन किया था जब अलायंस तोड़ा था. सेकेंडली रिजाइन करने की बात करते तो इतनी हिम्मत है तो मिस्टर बाल ठाकरे ग्रैंडसन should have stood in Bandra in his constituency. He didn't stand there. He came to Worli. He removed the biggest margin winner of Shiv Sena from there. He also got Sachin Ahir on his side because he was afraid to lose. That is the confidence of people in their own party, in their own victory. And when they say that we will see, they are destroying the entire governance in Maharashtra. Maharashtra was never seen such a poor governance. If they are so worried, they should have called for a floor test immediately. As far as Deputy Speaker is concerned, Deputy Speaker cannot invalidate the MLA seat because he can only remove their membership if they don't listen to the party meeting. If they call assembly meeting and then issue whip and these members don't listen, only then they can be disqualified as MLAs. And you go to court and make all side of, you're trying to avoid the vote of confidence. It's utter totally disarray. And they have lost their entire idea what to do. They have outsourced the thing to Mr. Sharad Pawar. But Sharad Pawar is my own man. He will do what is okay for his self-representation, not for Sena. And Sena people are so afraid of losing elections because they have lost contact with the people. They are fighting, they are in cahoots with the very people whom they are fighting in their own constituencies. So they realize now that they will not be able to survive the coming time apart from happiness with the alliance of the Shiv Sena supporters. It's also the kind of competition they were own constituency where no work was done. And if that
absolutely,
muscle power,
absolutely, but Tehseen Poonawala, you know, it's a bit of a bit of an odd situation where the Shiv Sena, which was friends with the BJP, now sits with NCP and the Congress, and in court it doesn't have its own MLA support who are fighting against them, but has Congress lawyers defending them and advice from Sharad Pawar asking them not to quit. I mean, if there was an odd situation, then this is one which will go down in political history as the oddest of them all. Tehseen Poonawala, I want to ask you, is it so difficult to let go of power that Sharad Pawar is holding back Uddhav Thackeray even when numbers which matter in a democracy are not really with Uddhav Thackeray?
Namaskar, Navika ma'am. Thank you for having me in the show. Namaskar to all my fellow panelists and to all your viewers. To the second part of your question about the numbers can only be proved on the floor of the assembly. It cannot be proved in a TV studio, with due respect to you, and you know I have a lot of respect for you. It cannot even be proved in the Honorable Supreme Court, as the two learned lawyers on your show will tell you. It cannot even be proved anywhere on the streets. It can only be proved on the floor of the assembly. Therefore, my first submission before you and your audience is, please ask the BJP MLAs, whether rebel or whatever they think of themselves, to stop getting the special massages that they are getting in Assam, and I don't know what that is. Maybe my friend Anand will be able to elaborate more on the scientific use of it, but stop getting that and come to Mumbai and floor and prove the majority on the floor of the house, if they have a majority, so to speak. To what Ratan Sharda ji said, that I have to prove the majority, as I'm speaking third person, the Shiv Sena has to prove the majority. That's not true. The majority by the Shiv Sena has already been proved, and the honorable governor has already sworn in the chief minister. It is they or anybody who claims that the Shiv Sena and the MVA does not have a majority needs to bring a no confidence motion. What I see today that happened in the court is something that upheld democracy, and I'll just be very brief and I'll end this. Just for your viewers to understand, to remove the speaker from the assembly under 179C of the Constitution of India, what is required is two very fundamental things. A, you need to pass a resolution, but to pass that resolution, it can only be passed when the House is in session, and you need to give a 14-day period for that resolution to be passed. Now, intention cannot remove a speaker. It has to be facts. And within 7 days of this resolution being passed, if they have minimum 29 MLA support, can this speaker be removed if they have that number? The Shiv Sena, Eknath Ji faction obviously does not have it, because if it had that kind of numbers, they would be in Mumbai proving the majority of removing the speaker, sitting in Assam in a five-star hotel.
A little minor detail that you seem to have missed out is the fact that the Shiv Sena moved to disqualify only 16 MLAs. Only 16 MLAs and not the 39 who had gone away. Under what
That's
intelligence,
true.
I don't know. Number one. 1 minute, hold on.
I'll reply on that.
Half-truths can be misleading. So let me complete, let me add to your speaker argument, let me add the MLA argument. The disqualification of the 16 MLAs has not been allowed by the Supreme Court. And the time that was given till today evening 5:30 has also been found insufficient by the Supreme Court and has been extended to 12th of July evening. So my friend, when you begin to become very pious and talk about, oh, inke paas number hote to they would have passed the resolution to remove the speaker, then अगर आपने लॉ ठीक से पढ़ा होता तो आप भी एमएलएस की डिस्क्वालिफिकेशन थोड़ा रुक के सोच के समझ के तब मूव करते, because that is what the Supreme Court has found today. Now hold on, Anand Ranganathan, I'm coming back to you. Debate अभी शुरू हुई है, debate अभी शुरू. We're all around. Anand Ranganathan, according to Tehseen Poonawala's argument, massages are illegal, but having fewer numbers in the house is legal. is legal. That's the nuts and bolts of the argument that he presented. Where do you stand on that argument?
Good evening, Navika, and good evening to my fellow esteemed panelists. I am willing to give free of cost a head massage to Tehseen if it makes him improve his logical capabilities. But I'm afraid it's not going to do any harm. There are two issues here, and both are very serious. Number one, Tehseen is an activist. I have seen him. Tehseen, please. I have never been a big boss contestant, so I do not know what other massages there are. But please, I'm talking of a very serious matter. Which is what I was asking you for. And I want to involve you as well, because it's a very serious matter. Tehseen, you are now, Navika.
Yes, I'm lowering his fader. I'm lowering his fader. Anand Ranganathan, go on.
Yes, Navika, I wanted to draw a parallel between what Tehseen said, which unfortunately, I hope you wouldn't mind my saying so, I found extremely egregious. He's making light-hearted comments on something which is a very serious matter, because I want to bring him now. He has led, possibly still does, leads a life of an activist. I have seen him getting arrested, being pulled up from a police van. I think it was a case of onion price rice or something like that. I want to ask him, has Tehseen ever been manhandled, brutalized, his family targeted, his home and his offices vandalized, threats given to Tehseen that he is going to return back as a corpse? Has that ever happened to Tehseen? So when Tehseen says that those MLAs out there who are in hiding, admittedly, yes, and I was the first one to criticize them. But today the Supreme Court, the lawyer for them has said, the threat, my lord, is real. Shiv Sena is threatening them of, they will come back as corpses. On what condition will they come back and hold, a floor test, or be in a condition to hold a floor test? Tehseen is an activist, he should know this. Is he not seeing the videos and the horrible visuals of their families, their businesses, their offices being targeted, of those horrible vicious comments being made against them? So, two things here. Number one, while I do agree that this kind of circus has gone on for too long, and there are esteemed lawyers on this panel who would be able to elucidate that much more, there has to be a floor test. It has to go back to being normal, Maharashtra Assembly. But how can you hold a floor test when such egregious threats are being given, and people like my good friend Tehseen are normalizing this kind of violence and threats of violence? I'm sorry, Navika, this is unacceptable.
Absolutely. And
May I reply?
Deepak Keshrekar was with me just a few minutes ago and talking about the fact how his family, how he was being intimidated, how his car was surrounded by 150, 200 people, and how, literally threats were pouring down apart from bad language. But that apart, let me ask Sanjay Hegde. Sanjay Hegde, on the legal side, there are two questions that need to be settled. Is the Supreme Court's, interim order today going to stop a floor test from happening? Because as everybody in this country is watching, this drama has gone on for too long. Can there be a floor test in the interim before the Supreme Court hearing on the 11th of July, number one? And number two, which is the real Shiv Sena? The one with 15 members or one with 39 members?
There is no Shiv Sena with 15 members. The Shiv Sena, if I remember rightly, has about 60 lakh registered members. About 40-50 of them happen to be MLAs. The MLAs are not the party. You can't, it's not a game of kabutarbazi where if you capture the majority of the kabutars, you can run around and saying, me Shivaji, me Shivaji. That's not how it works. As far as your first question is concerned, as to what the Supreme Court has done, let me just explain it to you. The Supreme Court is on vacation. It is reopening on the 11th of July. It has said, please finish all the paperwork. You say that the Deputy Speaker can't decide your question of disqualification. The Deputy Speaker says that you gave a notice through an email which was written by a lawyer. That does not amount to be a proper procedure, and the Deputy Speaker has not taken that on the record of the Assembly itself. All these questions will go into on the 11th, but in the meanwhile, don't do anything which will make the matter infructuous. Therefore, what it has done, it has not stayed anything. All that it has said is that till the 11th, extend the date for them to put in a reply. Now, a floor test can be held at any point of time. That was never an issue before the Supreme Court. But a floor test for what? A floor test happens when a set of people goes either to the Assembly and says, we want to bring in a no confidence motion, or they go to the governor and say, look, there is no floor test being summoned. We have withdrawn our support to the government. Please ask the government to prove its majority. Now, one more thing in constitutional law, in a parliamentary system, a government may not even have a majority on the floor of the House. But as long as it is not defeated on the floor of the House, it can continue. There have been minority governments in India. Indira Gandhi ran a minority government. Manmohan Singh ran a minority government. Narasimha Rao ran a minority government. But when a floor test was ultimately held, you remember that the CPM walked away after the nuclear deal? There was a floor test. And in the floor test, the government of the day survived. So whoever goes to Guwahati, whoever gets massages or money or whatever else, that is absolutely irrelevant. Ultimately, has somebody staked an alternate claim to government? If there is a stake, then summon the Assembly and have a floor test. You just can't have a floor test in the air. You can't have a floor test to determine who is the real Shiv Sena.
Well, Swapnil Kothari, is there no grounds for anybody to say, because he's saying there are so many lakhs of members of the Shiv Sena, so who's the real Shiv Sena is not the question. Is that the only way to look at this? Because the Shiv Sena as a party may exist, but the fact is these parties send their representatives, and these representatives are in the Legislative Assembly, and in that Legislative Assembly there were 55 of them. Now 39 are on one side, 16 are on the other side. Are you saying the question of which is the real Shiv Sena is misplaced and will not be decided on the basis of these numbers, but will be decided on the basis of the registered members which exist in the party's headquarters?
The answer to that is no, Navika. That's an erroneous interpretation. The 50-60,000 members who have registered are not considered as Shiv Sena for the purposes of the Legislative Assembly. It's those 55 MLAs now reduced down to 13 or 16 to whatever numbers that they are. So the majority members who constitute that may be considered as Shiv Sena by the Election Commission if they so wish to, profess that before the Election Commission. My basic issue is that the floor test, to say that it cannot be conducted or it should not be conducted is erroneous again, simply because the floor test must be conducted. The governor has the discretionary power. He doesn't have to wait for anybody to come to him and tell him. He has the discretionary power. When he looks at the fact, he's the constitutional head of any state. So when he looks at these numbers, these depleting numbers, which are there in the Council of Ministers, obviously he has a right to say that, look, the majority is not there. I can call for the floor test. Now, as far as when he calls for the floor test, what the Uddhav Thackeray camp could do is they could say, sorry, we do not agree to this because we have our proceedings pending, because the entire purpose of getting the members disqualified, and 16 at that, surprisingly you asked a very relevant question as to why only 16. Obviously on that ground, that Supreme Court could say that it's very arbitrary to send these kind of a disqualification notice where you send only to 16 out of some 30, 40 people that who've left for Govt. You cannot be selective about this. That's the aspect of arbitrariness under Article 14 of the Constitution. Now, coming to this point is that you cannot say that the floor test cannot be conducted. The floor test, the governor has the power, he's the constitutional head. When he looks at the Council of Ministers, who in turn appoint the chief minister, he's going to say that there is not enough number, there's not enough majority. So let me call for a floor test. Now, if both the parties agree to that, then this whole proceedings before the Supreme Court get nullified or infructuous, because both the parties have now agreed for the floor test to be conducted, and they're prepared to whatever outcome, whatever comes out of it. The entire purpose of having the disqualification notice, was to quell or to reduce the numbers so that when the floor test happens, the disqualification law, which is the anti-defection law under the 10th schedule of the Constitution, comes into play and say that you do not have the requisite numbers, you're disqualified because you do not have the 2/3 numbers, which is 37 of your own party that need to be there. And, I'm surprised, Navika, that there is some quaint notion that this rebel camp needs to merge with the party when paragraph 4 of the 10th schedule of the Constitution as amended by the 91st Amendment clearly states that either you merge or you form your own faction. So I do not understand. They obviously, I do not recommend that they call themselves Shiv Sena. They can call themselves anything else. They can tie up with the BJP and that they can appear and have a floor test if they wish to have that.
Sorry, read paragraph 4.
Crucial point.
Well, now the point is, wait, can I finish, please? So the point is that regardless of what happens, the floor test can be conducted, but provided both the parties, if they concede to that. But I'm sure that Mr. Uddhav Thackeray's camp would, run a tad hesitant to do that, not because they don't have the numbers, but because they may say that, look, we have our proceedings pending. Let us try to expeditiously, finish that. But the government could say that, no, I'll approach the Supreme Court and I'll say, let's finish that off first. And then try to get this out of the way.
So you are saying we are back to square one, and Dr. Anand Ranganathan,
Navika, 10 seconds.
Yes, then we come back to square one, and the entire proceedings continue to hang in balance. There cannot be a floor test, and we still won't have a government at the end of the day in Maharashtra till 11th of July when the Supreme Court hears. Is that the way forward?
Well,
Navika, can I please suggest a way forward which is sensible and logical, which is that for...
It's not just back to square one. Sorry. I'm pointing out the legal impediment that the governor could face if he wishes to...
I agree with you, Swapnil Kothari, but I'm also looking at it, between... See, two lawyers never agree with each other. Sanjay Hegde is objecting to what you're saying. Iske beech mein janta hai, which is sitting for the last 8 days, watching a tennis match and the ball going from one side to another, from Mumbai to Guwahati, then from Guwahati to Mumbai, and in the middle there was a Supreme Court here today, which is again kept the ball in the air, and we are waiting, will it fall down, will it not? Anand Ranganathan, isn't that how the situation is?
No, absolutely, and I was just about to suggest something which was a remedy for this, which is as following. Navika, for 2 years, the whole world, leave alone India, has gone through the most dramatic and most tragic turmoils where our lives have been turned upside down. We've learned to live with online Zoom calls. You've conducted debates on Zoom. Supreme Court has conducted hearings. The two esteemed lawyers on this panel would agree. They've conducted hearings on Zoom. Karnataka High Court hijab hearing was completely on Zoom. Why can't we have a floor test on Zoom?
No, that's fine.
You need a constitutional amendment for that. Absolutely. Do a constitutional amendment, then let's abolish all
on Zoom. People may be put on gunpoint also if they're on Zoom call.
Let's have the Lok Sabha on Zoom. No, come on. There is a
on Zoom,
limit.
Anybody can be locked in a room. They can be put on gunpoint.
Are you saying, Sanjay Hegde, that the court cases before the Supreme Court were any less important than a floor test? They could be done on Zoom?
No,
Yes.
You can't have it on Zoom.
Exactly.
You would have to amend the constitution, because there is, after all, you have the legislature. You would therefore have to have the legislature in session within the physical jurisdiction of the place. Now, if you want to have it on Zoom, please amend the constitution and start doing it. But tossing it off just like this, off the drop of your hat in a TV debate, I'm sorry, I'm too much of a traditionalist.
Fair point. It's not possible to do it, at least as of now, till there's a constitutional amendment. But Tehseen Poonawala, the point really is, why are we not looking at the people of Maharashtra? What are they getting? For 8 days, they've been in suspended animation. The government has not been in suspended animation. It's just been suspended. Animation hai nahi abhi. But people are waiting and watching about what's going on between Mumbai and Guwahati, and all the legal eagles, all the advice, and there have been speculations which say that Uddhav Thackeray wanted to resign, but Sharad Pawar has prevented him from doing so. I want to ask you, is there no way that there can be some morality and propriety about these things, and the constituents of an alliance can sit together, look at the entire situation and decide whether they have the numbers or they don't have the numbers, and do what is right as they say, हमारा जो धर्म होता है या संस्कार जो बताते हैं कि अगर नहीं है नंबर तो भाई हट जाओ, allow some sort of a government to come back to power, because ultimately, is this about power or is this about the people of Maharashtra?
Navika, just one line.
Atal
Bihari Vajpayee in the 13-day government. Atal Bihari Vajpayee ran a 13-day government despite not having the numbers. He did it to prove a political point. He came back to power, right? So ultimately, irrespective of whether you have the numbers or not, the floor test, a no confidence motion, speeches, that is what is going to set the tone.
Well, so you're saying instead of morality and propriety, there should be a platform for more speech making. Well, you talked about a 13-day government. Let me also remind you, Sanjay Hegde and Tehseen Poonawala, of a 13-month government, which also fell because the Congress played foul in that particular floor test. Girdhar Gomang, and I was a young reporter in Parliament in those days. Girdhar Gomang went and became the chief minister of Odisha. He had been sent from Lok Sabha to become the chief minister. He had assumed, he had been sworn in as the chief minister of Odisha, but came back because he hadn't still resigned his Lok Sabha seat, and he came back and voted, and it was that one vote that made the Vajpayee government fall in 1999. And I want to ask you, Tehseen Poonawala, it is that propriety and morality that I'm bringing back on the table tonight. It was immoral then of the Congress party, and it is immoral today of the Congress party and the NCP to stick on and to hold on to power when the numbers really show that it's time to say bye.
I don't understand, Navika, and you're a very senior reporter, an editor, and I have so much respect for you. You keep seeing the numbers show, the numbers don't show anywhere, including in the Honorable Supreme Court. Before His Majesty, we all bow. The number can only show on the floor of the House, and you have to come to Mumbai in the Assembly and prove your numbers if you have these hypothetical numbers, which I believe they don't have. Point number two, to Anand's point, why don't you do it on Zoom? Yeah, Anand, let's do it on Zoom. Why the Prime Minister building a new parliament? That's not the debate of today. What is the debate for today is simple, this one line. Has anyone brought in a no confidence against the... You must come in after.
Ratan Sharda. Ratan Sharda, Tehseen has a point. What happened with Girdhar Gomang, immoral or improper. The fact is that it happened on the floor of the House, and today also, those who claim they have the numbers should demand this on the floor of the House and put the people of Maharashtra out of their misery. What is taking so long?
First of all, let me say that the Honorable, very senior advocate, Mr. Hegde, has made some very effective points about government not decided by the MLAs to be decided by lakhs of people on the road. Is he advocating direct democracy? Is he saying that indirect democracy of choosing MLA who run the government is wrong? By his own statement, he means that it doesn't matter that he used the word kabutarbaji. So if MLAs are kabutars, and there is no sense in there being any party, why have elections? Do you have direct elections? He's negating the entire constitutional makeup of these elections. That is point one. Point two, he talked, floor test, everybody is talking. There are a number of judgments every time, at least 7 or 8, when Supreme Court has called for a floor test within 24 hours, when they say there is no majority. Why this time Supreme Court didn't know when they went to the courts? I do not know. I am not a legal expert, nor can I spout knowledge like other lawyers sitting here. But I can say it was very possible for the government, which knows that its 40 MLAs are out of their hold, to say, okay, these people are not there, let me have a floor test. You're so sure of floor test, the government should proactively call for them. This government took 6 days to remove the ministers who were part of Shiv Sena. So they don't want to govern. They don't want to do anything. They want to somehow delay the whole pain so they can try to somehow get their MLAs back by threat and by every kind of arm twisting. So we have to understand, if we want to stop arm twisting, the governor has to come into picture, knowing what is happening with so many MLAs of Shiv Sena party, and call for floor test immediately.
Well, Sanjay Hegde, you want to respond?
Yes. There's a small thing called the Constitution of India. You must read it again and again and again. So paragraph 4 of the 10th schedule says, a member of a house shall not be disqualified under the subparagraph where his original party merges with another political party, and he claims that he and any other members of the original party are the true party, and for the purposes of this subparagraph, the merger shall be deemed to have taken place if and only if 2/3 of the members have agreed to a merger. So Mr. Shinde's original party, the Shiv Sena, has it merged with any other party? No. Does he now seek to merge with any other political party? So far, no. All his functioning has been on the basis that I have split. The split has gone away from the anti-defection schedule from 2003. Today, if you have to succeed and not be disqualified, you have to merge. So there is no question of any Shinde Sena, this Sena. Please go and merge with the BJP. Thereafter, lay claim saying that now the BJP has some 30 odd people more in addition to the 100 and something which it originally had. Now the BJP is in position to form a government in Maharashtra, go to the governor. The governor will then say, Mr. Chief Minister, that is Mr. Uddhav Thackeray, please prove your majority on the floor of the House. There will be a floor test. There will be speeches. And ultimately, there will be voting.
Well,
that is how a parliamentary democracy works.
Well, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, in the end, what are we looking at? More and more constitutional procedures, and yet people's interests clearly taking a backseat for the moment. Anand?
No, absolutely, Navika. Yes, Navika, look, I have the primary concern for me is the concern of the people of Maharashtra. And I'm not a Luddite. I believe in solutions, not problems, or, being a traditionalist. As I've already said, this solution is in front of you, which is a floor test. Now, it can be Supreme Court appointed floor test as soon as possible, because the longer this goes on, it is resembling the Agatha Christie novel, and then there were none. These MLAs slowly, one by one, are going to be coerced. Their families are going to be blackmailed, and slowly you will find them dwindling down. So two solutions. One, either Z plus security be given, all the MLAs brought to Maharashtra under the auspices of Supreme Court, hold a test, or a Supreme Court judge goes to Guwahati and under his auspices has a Zoom online floor test. That's it. That's a solution.
Well, but that solution, of course, will have to go through some constitutional.
One second, Navika, you cannot allow this. Sorry. How can a court interfere in the functioning of the House? The House is run only and only by the Speaker. What are you allowing on the show, Navika? Are we throwing the Constitution out? Are we replacing the Constitution with WhatsApp Constitution? Can a Supreme
Who is
Court
the Speaker? For 1.5 years, you don't have a Speaker.
Come on, Anand. I don't expect this from you. How can a Supreme Court judge? Tomorrow, can a Speaker of the House, can Om Birla run the Supreme Court? Can he become Chief Justice?
It's clear, Tehseen Poonawala, don't get all agitated. He is only offering a solution. It's not a constitutional amendment that he is even suggested, that you are suddenly becoming so intolerant of something an ordinary man is saying. A man who's not part of politics is looking at the people. No, it's just an out-of-the-box suggestion. You don't have to go all blue in your face trying to say कि अरे भाई कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन की हत्या हो गई. उस दिन को भी याद कर लो जिस दिन गिरधर गोमंग ने वोट किया था. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन की हत्या तब भी हुई थी. तब आपको इतना बोलना शायद याद नहीं रहा था क्योंकि तब हत्या करने वाले आप थे. आज आप बहुत एजिटेटेड नजर आ रहे हैं. But whichever way you look at it, it is really an issue that concerns the people of Maharashtra. And at the moment, while the Shiv Sena, the NCP, Shiv Sena, Faction 1 and the NCP seem to be talking to each other, and the legal support comes from the Congress party lawyers, the other side is the faction that claims to have more MLAs, but the BJP is still playing coy. We are given to understand that coyness is going to go away, and in the next 24 hours, the top high-level meeting will be held by the BJP to assess the situation. In the meanwhile, will the governor push the envelope? Will he ask? Because the governor can suo moto look at the state that he's sitting in and look at the state of the people who are looking for a government to govern them. Can the governor push the envelope and order a floor test, or will there be ifs and buts on that as well? And once again, another round of legal battles. Well, we're hoping Maharashtra sees a government sooner than later. Thank you very much to my panelists for joining me on debate number 1.